Any matters that we need to place on the record at this time?
Not from State, Your Honor. No, Your Honor.
All right, Mrs. Harper. All rise for the jury. All right, may be seated, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, at this time, we're going to continue with the direct examination of Detective Howe. You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, I believe when we left off, I was just about to approach you with your report. If I may. May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Detective Howe, do you recognize T5?
Yes, these are the location records received back from Google.
And did we go over this before your testimony before today?
Yes.
And then what about T4?
T4 is a copy of my historical cell site and geolocation report.
Permission to publish, Your Honor?
Any objection?
Your Honor, just to prior objections.
Okay, noted for the record.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, Detective, we're going to go to page 2 of your report. Sorry about that. Detective, what is this summary in your report?
This summary is information provided to me about the case from Detective Hughes.
And what was the email that was associated with this phone that you got the geolocation information on?
The email here is tonypardon52@gmail.com.
And that was the Gmail associated with the Android phone?
Yes, it was.
And why do you get a summary from the detective?
I get a summary from the detective just so I have an event timeline, so we're able to condense the type of analysis that we're going to do, and so we know what, or I'm sorry, so I know what happened as far as related to my analysis.
And then at page 3, what is this?
Page 3 is the objective and the tools that we use. So the objective is what information Detective Hughes was looking to show with the analysis.
And you have that the equipment was CellHawk. What is that?
CellHawk is an automated tool that we use to input this data and do analysis. It's similar to like the forensic tools that we use for the devices.
And have you used CellHawk before?
Yes.
Do you have some samples in your report
Yes, I
that
do.
show what different coverage looks like?
Yes.
And then page 9, what is this?
Page 9 is the target phone activity during the time frame that Detective Hughes provided to me. So all of this contains a date, a time, and where the device was believed to be.
And do you use this for anything in your report?
Yes, in this particular case, there were several known locations that I was able to use the timeline to marry it up with the maps that I use.
Okay. Page 10. Could you explain what we see on this page?
This is just a map of the incident location and any known locations that were in that area that was of interest.
So what is this address in the middle here?
I believe that is 3058 Allegheny Avenue.
What significance did that have to you?
Originally, I was given that as the location, but it was based on, I believe it was a rental office or a management office, so it wasn't the actual incident location.
Do you get that commonly when you get addresses in apartment complexes or condo associations?
Yes, our crime scene search unit is looking for like a physical mailing address that they use for their reports and photographs and things. So they'll commonly use that. But whereas we're more interested in where the incident actually happened.
And what is this pin up here?
That's the actual incident location, the apartment where the homicide occurred.
And detective, how did you actually get that information?
When I didn't have that exact information when I originally began looking at this. It kind of wasn't matching up. So I contacted Detective Hughes and I asked him if he could go to the incident location and then just give me the coordinates from basically the front steps of where it occurred.
And so then is that how you got this information for the pin on the incident location?
Yes, Detective Hughes traveled back to the scene and then provided me with that exact location, so that way it would be more accurate.
Is that important to you in these cases?
Yes, because when you're using the GPS and the Wi-Fi, the coordinates are pretty tight. So if it's off by a few feet, a few hundred feet, it could just show a totally different location.
And page 11.
Again, this is just all known locations that were given to me at the time as far as what was around the incident location.
And page 12.
Again, this is a continuation of all of the all of the locations from Detective Hughes's timeline.
Okay, and our page, and I'm sorry, what's that address if you can read it up there?
I believe it's 1548 Cleveland Avenue, Fine Food Mart.
And page 13.
Again, a continuation of some of the addresses provided by Detective Hughes.
And what was this address up here to the left?
77 South High Street.
Page 14.
Again, continuation, multiple locations as far as was provided by Detective Hughes.
What were some of the names of the locations, if you can read them?
There's a U.S. Bank on East Main Street, Huntington Bank on East Main Street, Food Mart on East Main Street, and a carryout also on East Main Street.
And what about down here?
Speedy Mart on East Livingston Avenue, and then in the top right-hand corner is a Kroger's from Hamilton Road.
Page 15. What is this, detective?
This is the start of the actual analysis of the data that was received.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the information on here. What does ESTCONV mean?
That is the actual date and time stamp converted to Eastern Standard Time for this device.
When you say converted, what does that mean?
Yes, so most phone companies and Google send their data back in what's referred to as UTC time. It's just Universal Coordinated Time. It's how the world basically sets its clocks. When we're in Ohio with daylight saving time, depending on what time of year it is, will be -4 or -5 hours from that coordinated time.
So then you actually do the conversion?
Yes.
And then latitude and longitude, what is that in reference to?
That's going to be the coordinates for the location hit.
And display radius, can you explain what that is, please?
The display radius is going to be the circle that you see here. It's going to be in meters. So the number represented here would be 21 meters. There's about a little over 3 feet to a meter.
So, just for reference, is this less than a football field?
Yes.
And then it has source. What is that?
That is the source of the data of the location hit. So in this particular case, it was a Wi-Fi connection. Or I'm sorry, a Wi-Fi source.
And then what about device tag?
The device tag is going to be a unique identifier that Google uses that's internal to them.
And then platform?
Platform is a combination of the operating system, the cell phone carrier, and then the actual phone.
Okay. So on page 15, where is the display radius in connection to the incident location?
It is to the east of this Allegheny Avenue address, the rental office address.
And this is at what time?
That is at 7:59 p.m. on January 28, 2018.
Page 16. Could you please explain this to us?
Page 16 on January 28, 2018 at 8:04 p.m. There was a 30-meter Wi-Fi hit, and it was near the incident location. Here you can see it's marked by this balloon.
So is the incident location actually located within the display radius in this case?
Yes,
And what time is that at?
that is at 8:04 p.m.
So correct me if I'm wrong, the radius we saw at 7:59 was somewhere around here,
Yes,
and now it has moved up to the incident location.
yes.
What is page 17?
Page 17 is the T-Mobile phone records that Detective Hughes supplied. This is just for illustration purposes, showing this is the difference between a cell tower hit provided by the carrier and an actual hit from the Google data that we received. So here you will see this is where the actual tower is. This will be the sector lines here, and this general location is where the carrier believed that device to be based on that tower and sector.
So is this kind of what you talked about earlier, kind of marrying up the cell tower info with the GPS or Wi-Fi information?
Yes, it's to show the difference between the two, and that the cell phone tower hits are accurate, they're just less accurate.
Let's talk a little bit about page 18. Could you please explain what this is?
So page 18, again, is just an illustration. Each, it's a little difficult to see, but each of these are an individual location hit that Google provided us, and this is between 7:59 p.m. and 9:25 p.m. So some of the smaller ones here that you'll see are GPS, Wi-Fi hits that are a little more accurate, and then some of them will be cell tower hits, which have a wider radius.
Now, Detective, did you actually count how many hits occurred during this time period?
Yes,
How many was that?
35.
35 hits?
Yes.
And were those, I guess, what were those? Were those Wi-Fi and GPS?
They were a combination of, I believe, all three.
Okay. And explain a little bit, why do we have some big circles versus some little circles?
That's just the signal that you receive. If it's a better signal, you're going to have a smaller, tighter radius. If the signal is obstructed or it's using a source like a cell tower, they'll be larger.
Okay. So some of the smaller circles about, or I guess let me back up. What is the smallest display radius that you have seen?
15 meters.
15 meters?
Yes.
In this case, do you recall what the smallest display radius was?
I believe it was 21 in that area.
Okay. So within 21 meters, that phone is hitting on that incident location.
Yes, at certain points.
Now explain to me why 35 times? What is it doing?
Those are just the signals that the device is sending back that Google is then recording. So 35 separate times it accessed that.
And is that what you talked about earlier, the minute and a half to 2 minutes?
Yes.
So every minute and a half to 2 minutes, we should see another bubble.
From what I've seen in past cases, that's pretty typical. Sometimes you will see large blocks where you don't receive any data. The phone could have been off or something like that, but pretty consistently that's what I see.
And just for clarification, the bigger hits, could that also be somebody moving?
Yes, any of these could be a movement.
But in your analysis, where are most of the hits centered on?
Near that incident location.
Okay. And what was the time that these hits all had?
That was between 7:59 p.m. and 9:25 p.m.
I remember what I was going to ask. Does the person actually have to be using their phone for these hits to happen?
No, it just has to be accessing those location services.
So the phone has to be on, and the location services have to be on.
Yes.
Okay. Go to page 19. What is this?
Page 19, January 28, 2018 at 9:30 p.m. Again, here are the coordinates. The display radius on this particular Wi-Fi hit was 69 meters.
And so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It was in the area of James Road, I believe that is.
Okay. And what are all these yellow dots up here?
Those are the previous displays of where the incident location was.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, within 5 minutes of the last known hit up at the incident location, within 5 minutes, the defendant's phone is hitting, you said in the area of James?
And East Broad, I believe.
Okay. Can you read what that says right there? It's a little bit.
Yes, East Broad's here, so it's more towards James Road and looks like Maryland Avenue.
And when it's hitting Wi-Fi, does that person have to be standing right next to that business or home for that Wi-Fi to hit?
No, your device just has to see it and record it, and then that's how they determine where it is.
Hypothetically, could you be in a car and your phone still reach out for a Wi-Fi hit?
As long as it could see as long as they interacted and communicated.
And detective, just sorry, briefly, one more time on page 19. In your training and experience, would you think a person is walking or driving to get from the incident location to this first hit within 5 minutes?
Definitely wouldn't be walking to get that distance in 5 minutes.
Would they have to be in a motor vehicle of some sort?
Yes.
Page 20, what is this?
Page 20 is the next hit. It is on January 28th, 2018 at 9:31 p.m. These are the coordinates. It's a 25-meter radius, and it's from a Wi-Fi signal. It's at this location. This is the previous location.
So are we kind of following the phone as it moves?
Yes.
Page 21.
This is the next hit, January 28th, 2018, 9:32 p.m. These are the coordinates. It's a 20-meter hit in this location, which is near some of the locations that were on Detective Hughes's timeline. And here's the previous hit.
And what are some of those places that were on that timeline?
There is a Food Mart, a U.S. Bank, a Huntington Bank, and a carryout.
Page 22.
Page 22 is January 28th, 2018 at 9:49 p.m. It is a 21-meter hit off a Wi-Fi source, and it is near the Food Mart on East Main Street. It's indicated by the little blue balloon.
So this little pin is the Food Mart,
Yes,
and how long or how big is the display radius?
21 meters.
And is that pin for the Food Mart within the display radius?
Yes.
Page 23.
Page 23 is 3 of the hits with Wi-Fi. I'm sorry, the Wi-Fi is the source. It's between 9:55 p.m. and 10 p.m. and it is near a BP gas station, I believe that is.
And is this the prior location we had just talked about?
Yes.
So we're moving down Main Street?
Yes.
And Detective, could you explain to us why would this pin be outside the display radius?
It just depends where the location is and the strength of the signal that you have. It's in that general area.
And these pins, is that kind of what you were talking about with the leasing area or the leasing office? It's the actual mailing address of these businesses?
Yes.
Okay. And are the hits still happening how you talked about every minute and a half to 2 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. And I guess, how long between these 3 hits were there?
A total of 5 minutes.
Page 24.
Page 24 is January 28, 2018 at 10:06 p.m. 27-meter radius here at this location, which is the U.S. Bank on East Main Street, and then this is the previous last location.
And again, that's a Wi-Fi hit.
Yes, it is.
Page 25.
Page 25, January 28, 2018 at 10:16 p.m. This is the coordinates, a 97-meter hit on a Wi-Fi source, so right here.
And what is within the display radius?
That is also the that's the Huntington Bank on East Main Street.
And Detective, I guess I should have asked you, these places of interest, did Detective Hughes explain why they were of interest?
Yes, that was locations known to him where he believed the device was at specific times, which he provided in the event log that he had given me, the timeline.
On the event time log, does it talk about debit card usage?
I don't recall if in that timeline he gave me, I know that's what he later told me that it was. He was able to marry those up with some videos and things like that.
Page 26.
Page 26 is January 28th, 2018 at 10:21 p.m. This is the coordinates. A 33-meter hit on a Wi-Fi source in this location. And just to the east of it is a carryout, M&M, I believe it's M&M carryout.
If I said R&M, would that sound familiar?
R&M, I'm sorry, I can't read it.
No problem. And I should ask you also, Detective, when these hits are coming, hypothetically, if we have bank records that say that at 10:20, the debit card was asked to be used, but the hit says 10:21, how can we explain that with the hit with the debit card?
With the location information sent from Google, it's not always going to coincide with what the ATM, or what the ATM records might show. So if you're off by a minute or two, then that device could have moved, or the signal could have gotten stronger, or it could have gotten worse.
Is that every minute and a half to 2 minutes just might not have hit at that time the bank record says?
Yes.
Page 27.
I'm sorry, could you slide that over?
Yep, sorry.
Page 27, January 28, 2018 at 10:34 p.m. A 100-meter hit off a Wi-Fi source. This is the radius area, and it is near a Kroger's here.
Can you tell what the address for that Kroger was?
I cannot from the map. I believe it's below what you have there.
That help a little bit.
358 South Hamilton Road.
Thank you. Page 28.
Page 28, January 28, 2018 at 11:09 p.m. an 82 meter hit off a Wi-Fi source in this general area.
And what is within the radius?
Speedy Mart.
On page 29, I believe we've moved ahead a day.
Yes, January 29th, 2018 at 10 a.m. These are the coordinates. A 66 meter hit off a Wi-Fi source in this area, which is near 77 South High Street.
Do you know what's at 77 South High Street?
It was in a government building, I believe, that Detective Hughes said that he thought.
Object, Your Honor.
Yeah, sustained.
You can't say what Detective Hughes said. So did you know what was at 77 South High?
A government building.
Okay. And what time was that at?
That was at 10 a.m. on January 29th, 2018.
On page 30?
January 29th, 2018 at 3:14 p.m., a 20 meter hit off a Wi-Fi source. It's located right here by the Fine Fair Food Market.
The next one from January 29th?
This is 2 hits off a Wi-Fi source. There is a 100 meter hit, which is the larger, and then a 20 meter hit, which is near, I'm sorry, I can't read those. If you could, looks like ExxonMobil.
And this bigger radius, is this first in time or second in time?
That is first in time at 3:57 p.m.
So our display radius is actually getting smaller at this point?
For the next one, yes, it did.
Page 32?
Page 32 is January 29th, 2018 at 4:30 p.m. A 20 meter hit off a Wi-Fi source in this area. I'm sorry, I can't read it.
No problem. You know your eyes were going to get tested today, huh?
Yeah.
What's this store's name?
City Trends,
And do you know what the shopping center is called?
Northern Lights.
So there was a 20 meter hit around City Trends in Northern Lights.
Yes.
Page 33, also on January 29th. What is that?
Yes, there are 2 different location hits here at January 29th, 2018 at 5:51 p.m. There's a 312 meter Wi-Fi source hit, which is the larger radius here, and then a 61 meter hit, which is located here.
And what was the place of interest in this map?
DSW at 3710 Easton Market.
Page 34?
Page 34 is January 29th, 2018 at 8:41 p.m. And at 8:47 p.m. 50 meter hits off a Wi-Fi source in these 2 locations.
And Detective, were you asked by Detective Hughes to look at a different location for this date and time?
Yes.
If you could explain page 35 to us.
That is the distance between where the 2 location hits occurred and one of the areas where he believed that the device was.
So what is this up here?
So these are the locations, and then these are the addresses here.
And so Detective, correct me if I'm wrong, is this where the phone hit off of? Up here in the right-hand corner?
Correct.
but this is the area the detective was asking about.
Yes.
And what, I'll zoom in, what is the pin on this lower left side?
3600 Saldane Boulevard, Kroger's location.
So at this point, the phone is not pinging, or not having a hit at the address that Detective Hughes asked about.
Correct.
Page 36.
January 29, 2018 at 10:04 p.m. These are the coordinates. It is a 19-meter Wi-Fi source hit in this location of East Long Street.
And I'm sorry, what date and time was that?
January 29, 2018 at 10:04 p.m.
Okay. And page 37.
Page 37 is showing the distance between the location I was provided and where the actual Wi-Fi hit occurred.
So again, they don't match up.
Correct.
Page 38.
January 30th, 2018 at 6:15 p.m. These are the coordinates. It is a 1,018 meter GPS source hit in this location, which is near one of the markets on Cleveland Avenue.
Page 39.
February 1st, 2018 at 12:07 p.m. These are the coordinates. It's a 26 meter hit off a Wi-Fi source in this location.
And can you tell what that location is?
805 East Main Street, a pick and go.
And again, that pin is within the display radius
Yes.
on February 1st at 12:07 p.m.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. If I may have the lights. Detective, do you check your work?
Yes.
How do you do that?
When I receive the records back from any phone company or Google, I will manually check the information that they provided us in a second program to make sure that the Cellhawk program is reading it and interpreting it accurately.
Okay. So you check your own work?
Yes.
Do you have others check work for you?
At the time of this analysis, we didn't have anyone else who was trained in this type of location analysis. So at that time, this one was not checked, but since we now do.
And when you checked your work again, was it all accurate?
Yes.
And are your reports that we saw today true and accurate?
Yes.
If I may have one moment, Your Honor.
You may.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Van Cooten. Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Detective. How you doing?
Good afternoon.
I just want to ask you a couple questions. You know the drill. We'll start out with. Could I have those exhibits?
Which one?
All of them.
Do you want the discs too?
No, except for this. Yeah, just that one. So, the members of the jury saw where you had taken and did certain analysis on what Wi-Fi hits, or you call them geolocation hits. Is that correct?
Yes.
And those are the ones that you specifically picked out. Is that correct?
Yes.
In other words, there were other information that you got from Google that had geo hits, but they're not listed on your charts. Is that correct?
Correct.
So, do you know what cherry picking is?
I do.
What is cherry picking?
You would pick out what you wanted from the evidence.
And is that what happened in this case?
No, I used a timeline provided by Detective Hughes that had specific dates and times that he requested.
Right. And I believe the term you used was so that he could marry up this timeline with the information that he needed to complete his timeline, right?
Different dates and times of when he knew where the device was supposed to be located.
I guess the hell we gonna go through it. So here's what I'm asking. You took the times from the Google data that you received that matched up, or married up, with the timeline that Detective Hughes had indicated he wanted you to find. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I think Ms. Van Coolen asked you, nobody checked this work but you. Is that correct?
Correct.
So nobody else came in and said, well, you know what? Detective Howe, I'm going to look at this and see if you did this correctly. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, initially, you indicated that, well, let me rephrase that. You're doing this kind of work, the forensic digital information from the phones. Did that start out sort of like a hobby?
What do you mean, like a hobby?
In other
I did
words,
it as work.
I'm sorry.
I did it for work.
Yeah, but I mean, in other words, that wasn't something that you were trained in. That was something that you picked up on. You kind of liked doing it. And I think back in, was it 2009, you started fooling around with it. And then by 2012, you had gotten into it.
Those were two separate things. In 2009, I began to analyze phone records
Okay.
for location information. And then in 2012, I began the digital forensics.
Right. And so then you started, I believe, at that time, attending classes and getting more information on how this thing was done.
Yes.
So this is not something that you went to college for or anything like that. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then you went and you attended some seminars in Alabama and different places, and you got certified. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I believe that as a police officer, you were able to get into certain types of software programs that only police officers are allowed to get into. Is that correct?
I'm not sure what.
Cellbrite.
I'm sorry?
Cellbrite. Is that a software that anybody can use, or is that restricted to strictly police officers?
Private companies can also pay for and use certain services with Cellbrite.
When you say certain services, what do you mean? Can I go get in and order the software from Cellbrite?
You can use some of the services as far as like sending a device off to have like a PIN code extracted, you would not be able to do. But as far as using the software to analyze, like say in a private industry fashion, you'd be able to use it.
Was it always that way, or is that something new now that Cellbrite is now open up to the public?
As far as I know, they've always had private industry.
Okay. Now, where is the limitations? What is it I'm not allowed to get in?
You would have to ask them. I don't know their policies.
Okay. Do you know any civilians or companies that order Cellbrite besides law enforcement?
Yes.
And who would they be?
There is a person that I personally know in Texas who owns a private company that use Cellbrite.
Okay. What about Cellhawk? Is that the same for Cellhawk also?
I'm not certain on Cellhawk. I believe it's only law enforcement.
When you were talking about doing training and teaching, you were teaching other law enforcement?
Yes.
Nothing outside of law enforcement, is that correct?
No, not as far as me teaching.
Oh, can I have 1 minute?
You may.
Detective, I'm going to direct your attention to State Exhibit T2. Do you remember that exhibit?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe you started talking in terms of the second page.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And so again, so that I'm clear, what is box number 6?
Box number 6 is a text message in the inbox folder coming from a contact she had labeled as, or the user had labeled as John Anderson.
Okay, and what date was that?
January 20th, 2018.
So that I'm clear, when I was talking about cherry picking, there were other messages in there, but you went back and retrieved a message from January 20th of 2018 to indicate that text?
Yes.
And that was a text just to serve a purpose for this case?
Yes.
Okay. And would that be the same when we look at same exhibit and we move forward to, say, box number 2? Was that one that was picked out just for this case?
Yes.
So there are other messages and stuff in there that's not shown, but for purposes of this case, this is the cherry picking so that you can show an idea. Is that correct?
It's what you're referring to as cherry picking. It's
Yeah, I'm
relevant information that I was able to obtain based on case information.
And is that the same for number 3?
Yes.
So there were other messages in there, but for purposes of this case, you wanted a text that says, "Oh my God, brother left from my house with key. Can I stop by and get it later?"
Yes.
Okay. And then the same thing for number 4.
Yes.
And that was November 2nd of 17?
Yes.
Okay. And then number 5. Was number 4 included by mistake?
That one may have been, when I was flagging it, may have gotten included in there.
Okay. And then you got the message, "I'm headed over in 20." Is that correct?
I'm sorry, which one are you referring to?
Number 5.
I can't see it on the screen.
Oh, my bad. I'm reading. I think you can see it.
Yes.
Okay. Detective, before I go through your actual report, Your Honor, could I go back over?
Say that again, please.
Could I go back over here?
Oh, you may.
The report that you did you only do a report on one phone?
I'm sorry, which report are you referring to?
If I may approach the witness, Your Honor.
You may.
State Exhibit T4. Is that your historical site analysis report?
Yes, it is.
And what phone is that for?
That is for the device connected to the Tony Pardon 52 Gmail account.
Okay. Now, my question is, did you do any reports on any other phones?
As far as cell site analysis and
Yes, sir.
look at,
Yes.
no.
So you didn't do a geolocation to see where Rachel's phone had been?
I believe call detail records were obtained, but an iPhone acts differently and reports information back differently than what an Android does, as far as location services and Google is related.
I understand. Okay, so Detective Howe, what's the answer to my question?
I did not do one, no, because the data wouldn't have been there.
So are you saying that you're an expert in this area, that you could not have did a geolocation on Rachel's phone? Is that your testimony?
The information just is not there because you need a Gmail account. You need, for it to work on an iPhone, you would have to be using a Gmail account and accessing a Google source in order to get that data back. Her account, when I did the examination, was a Yahoo account.
So in all the years that you've been doing phone location data, if you got an iPhone, you can't trace it? Is that what you're saying?
Not nearly to the extent that you can in Android. That's why we use phone records and call detail records that have that historical data location.
So that's what I'm saying. So if I want to do it, you can't do it on the iPhone. Is that what you're saying, or you just didn't do it?
It's very specific to the type of service that you have, the type of operating system that you have, and what's going on. So she had a Yahoo account, which is not Google. It's Yahoo. And she would have had to have had that Gmail account accessing a Google location in order for that to work. So I believe, I didn't do the location house, but I believe phone records for her particular one were obtained. I don't know what happened with them.
Let me ask you this, so the members of the jury and I'm clear. Do you think that the analysis on Rachel's phone would have been important?
As far as location?
Yes, sir.
To my knowledge, Detective Hughes knew where the phone was located, and he obtained it from the scene.
So what I'm asking you is, you would rather rely on a receipt from Arby's with all this technology and phones than finding out where her phone actually went?
1 second. Please approach. Excuse us, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, the objection's overruled. The witness can answer the question.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yes, sir, I'm just gonna, what I got? I'm gonna try to rephrase the question because I don't remember exactly how I asked it. You know what I mean? So, let me shorten it up. You used to do homicide investigations, is that correct?
Yes.
And how many years were you in homicide?
5 years, I believe.
You knew certain facts about this case prior to your doing any testing or getting information or any Google results, is that correct?
Did I have certain facts about the case?
Yeah.
Just what Detective Hughes provided me.
Well, you had more than that because didn't you fill out a search warrant and an affidavit?
Much later after the incident.
In that affidavit, did you cite what this case was about?
Yes.
Okay. And Detective Hughes told you what the case was about, right?
Yes, that affidavit was a combination of things that I observed on the device after the examination and just case details.
Case details?
Yes.
Now, as a homicide investigator and using that experience in this, do you think knowing where Rachel's phone was, would that have been important to you?
If you're asking what I would have done, I would have pulled the phone record. If I was the lead investigator of the homicide, I would have pulled those phone records. I don't know that I would have done an actual analysis on where the device was located unless I found that to be of some significance.
Well, hypothetically speaking, you have a situation where, well, strike it. So going back, when you are doing your analysis, that's not independent, is it? I mean, it's not a totally independent analysis, is it?
I'm not sure I understand.
In other words, you have a lot of input from the lead investigator in this case. Is that correct?
Yes, he provided me with a timeline and locations.
And that's not all, is it? He also helped you in terms of conducting experiments in this case, didn't he?
No.
He didn't stand out on the porch with a phone, I thought you said, and by him standing out there, you would go places to determine the accuracy?
He did provide me with a location of the actual incident when I requested him to do that for me.
No, I was asking, did he stand out on a porch? I thought you indicated, maybe I heard you wrong, but I thought you indicated that Detective Hughes was at the apartment, and in order to get an accurate reading, he helped you by holding his cell phone, and you recording that information. Was I wrong?
No, he did go to the location, provide me with those coordinates. I wouldn't call that an experiment. We weren't testing anything. He was giving me a location.
Okay, so you're saying that he was doing this to test for accuracy, but now you're saying that wasn't testing? That wasn't
I don't believe I ever said testing for accuracy. He was giving me a location so that the location that I used for the maps that I was going to provide was the most accurate possible.
Oh, so he wasn't, okay, all right.
When you referred to it as an experiment, I didn't understand what you meant. We weren't experimenting or testing any like hypothesis or anything. We were getting a location so it was accurate.
I think you indicated also that that was very important because if you're off by just a few feet, it can distort all of the readings. Is that correct?
Correct. It would be the same as if I just give you a totally different address
Okay.
And referred to it as the incident location.
How accurate are your readings in your report that were displayed to this jury?
Depends which one you're referring to. If you show me individually, I can give you like a degree of accuracy based on the meters that they provide for that data.
I'm going to go to this. Could I have 1 minute?
You may.
So I'm going to direct your attention to page 15 of your report. Now, do I need to go up a little further? Would that help?
Yes, please.
So, what is that showing?
On this particular one, it shows on January 28th, 2018 at 7:59 p.m. It registered a Wi-Fi hit in this general area at a 21-meter radius is what Google displays, or assigns their degree of accuracy.
So what is the 21-foot radius in that? What is the 21-foot radius?
It is the illustrated with the yellow circle here.
So, I mean, take it out just so I'm clear. Does the radius, are you saying it's, can I use your pointer? Are you saying that it's, well, show me how to work it. There's right here. Are you saying it's 21 meters from the center?
Yes, it'd be a 21 meter on the 360 degrees.
So every time we talk about a radius in meters, we're not talking about the edge. We're talking about from that center of wherever that circle is.
Well, the degree of accuracy, the 21 meters that you see there will go out to the edge of the yellow circle.
That's what I'm just wondering, where do I start to begin the 21 meters? Do I start in the center? Can I start at the edge? Where do I start?
To get the 21 meters, you would start in the center.
In the center of each circle.
Where these coordinates are.
Well, is the coordinates the center of the circle?
Yes, and then the 21 meters encompasses that.
Okay. And I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification, page 17. Now 17, I need to break that down a little bit. 17 was just illustration of what? Is that just from a cell tower?
Yes, this is from the phone records, cell tower and sector that was at, you'd have to make it a little bigger.
Okay.
Looks like around 8:23 p.m. So here you have the Wi-Fi location hits near the incident location around that same time frame. This is the phone record hit, so the cell tower and sector that it registered on during that same time frame.
Now that maybe I'm confused. Where the yellow circle is and that dot, that's just for references. Is that correct? Or is that from another page?
It is, when you say from another page, it's one of the data locations that was provided during that time frame that registered at the incident or near the incident location.
And I believe your testimony was that the phone or the device could have been within any place where that sector, the 120 degrees from that tower, would sweep.
For that particular set of records, which
Yes.
was from the phone carrier, if you go back down,
Like,
I'm sorry, actual down. This is where the actual tower, the physical mast that comes up out of the ground would be. These are the sector lines of
Yes.
that particular sector you hit. On the phone records, this would be the general location of where that device was located. But with the Google records, it's much more condensed. You're able to get a more accurate reading.
and that's what you mean by that this technology is rapidly expanding, getting better, because you used to rely on just the cell towers. Now
Yes.
we can do the geolocation, is that correct?
Historically, prior to using this type of data, the only time we would get accurate, very accurate readings like that would be if we were live pinging a phone where the company is sending signals to the phone and then providing that to us with a search warrant.
And at the time, this technology was so new that you were the only one who was capable of understanding it. Is that correct?
We are a very new unit. I've been doing it since this type of work since like 2009. with location information and stuff. We just didn't have anyone trained. We started the unit in 2018.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. So at the time you did this, I think you testified that it was so new to your particular area that you were the only one who had training in this, right?
Yes.
Okay. And nobody could check it but you, right?
For a peer review, which is what you're referring to, you would need a peer to actually review the work that had been trained and could check that data.
You could have sent it out and had it checked though, right? If you wanted to.
We don't send peer reviews out. Are you talking like another agency or state or?
Yes, sir.
I guess technically you could.
Directing your attention to page 18. Where do we start with a center on all those circles? Where's the center?
Those are 30, this is for, this particular page is again for illustrative purposes to show how many location hits between that time frame of the events that Detective Hughes had provided me, the timeline. Like I said, there was 35 different hits, so each one of these are going to be individual hits.
So if I was to say, Detective Howe, something probably again, it's hard to do this, but if I was to take one of those circles right there, you see that one on the outer? The center would be about right here, is that correct?
Yes.
And that wouldn't be over here, would it?
There, with this particular map, you might have some overlap on different ones because they're hits at different times.
Right, okay. So when you say from that particular time to that particular time, what is it saying? I don't get it.
That there were multiple geolocation hits, which turned out to be 35 separate hits between that time frame.
What does that tell you about where the device was? In those circles somewhere?
Yes, at each individual location hit.
Okay. And then I think as you went through, you explained to the jurors all the other particular hits, and it was the same thing in terms of you start from the center, and that radius extends from the center of the circle. Is that correct?
Yes.
And like if I went to page 20, so I'm not sure, I want you to be able to see. So we have two, and I believe you indicated, so there's no confusion, the circle up to your left, that was just for reference.
Yes, that was to show where the device was in relation to the last page.
And in the circle with the arrow pointed at it, that is what the subject of this is. Is that correct?
Yes.
And from the center of that circle, and you have a 25-meter radius. Is that correct?
Yes.
$25 meters would be 75 yards. We're somewhere around there, right? I mean, 25 meters would be 75 feet.
Yes.
And based on that little circle, how far would 75 feet be? Can we tell from this picture?
It would be the circle.
The circle itself would be 75 feet.
Yes.
So is there a location that circle was supposed to be close to for Detective Hughes?
No, this was to illustrate it had left the area and started to move.
The bigger the circle, usually the larger the radius,
Yes.
because it's a weak signal.
It could be, or it could be the type of signal. For example, a cell tower would be a much larger radius.
And each one of these tells you if it's from a cell tower, or Wi-Fi, or,
Yes.
were there any GPS? Any GPS location at all?
I believe all the ones we looked at today were Wi-Fi.
Okay. Were there any GPS?
Not for the timeframes that we looked at today.
And I believe you indicated that the strongest and the best signal, number one would be the GPS signal,
Yes.
and then the second would be the Wi-Fi.
Yes.
So for purpose of this, we had the second best that we had. We didn't have the first. We didn't have Wi-Fi.
We did have Wi-Fi. The ones we looked at today didn't, I don't believe, had any GPS signals.
Okay. Can you get cell phone locations from a flip phone?
Yes.
You indicated that there was a reason you didn't get the cell phone records. Your job was to do what Detective Hughes asked you to do, is that right?
Well, I analyzed the data. The only reason that I got the location information from Google is because I had analyzed the phone. He had already previously tried, and they didn't give him any of the data back. Based on what the examination that I did and the data that I looked at, I knew we should have had data back from Google because we had a Gmail account, we knew the location services were enabled, and we had phone records that showed that the phone was active at the time.
And you can't go outside of whatever Detective Hughes indicates. So if he says, I want you to do this phone and that phone alone, you're stuck right there.
I would always do what the lead detective asked me to do. I wouldn't step outside that.
So you weren't ever asked to do anybody else's phone, were you? To see where their phone might have been during the crucial hours of this investigation?
Depends who you're referring to. I know I did Miss Anderson's and Mr. Parton's. Was the data that I was provided?
Did you do, like, say, Jonathan Kennedy, Tina Kennedy, Sean Griggs, anybody else?
I don't even know who those names are.
Okay. Do you recall when you were able to get the records from Google?
I don't recall.
Would have been April of 19? Would that ring a bell?
It could have been. I'd have to look at the data.
What would you have to look at?
It should be in one of the reports.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
This isn't everything. It would be.
Got some more. Excuse me if I got it out of order.
Yeah, I don't see it. I would say that's very close to the time frame. I'd have to look at the actual like return for the search warrant.
But April of 19 sounds pretty accurate.
Yes, based on the training that I'd gone to and the information I received, I would say April would have been probably when I did the search warrant to them, and
Right.
then I would have received the data some weeks after that.
Because you had went to a seminar in Alabama and returned and requested that information from Google, is that correct?
I went to a law enforcement tech conference in North Carolina or Washington, D.C., I believe. I don't recall which, where that information was relayed to us, that there was some additional wording and things that could help.
Do you think your results well, let me ask you this, and maybe you can tell me, why doesn't a detective doing your work, forensic, phone analysis, etc., why they don't start with a blank sheet and let their results lead them to a conclusion instead of starting out with a conclusion and then having their results marry up to that conclusion?
Well, you're talking thousands of records that you got to have a starting point.
So after you get the starting point, you can't let your analysis lead you to a conclusion?
That's what we just went over. That was the time frame that I analyzed based on the event timeline that I had. So that's the data that was looked at during those times.
And that's what I'm saying. Wouldn't your analysis be different if you didn't have that conclusion? Because then you would have a lot of other information included, wouldn't you? That you wouldn't filter out?
I would have to then turn over a 400-page report that I didn't actually analyze because I would need that information to do the analysis.
Okay, and you don't think that would be fair?
Well, all the data is there. I provide that to the detectives, and my analysis is based on the information I received for the case, and then I put that into a report format. Like even with the phone examination that you were referring to earlier, as far as taking certain text during like certain time frames, all that data is turned over to the detectives, but it contains thousands and thousands of text messages and photographs and just all the data that would reside on a phone.
And in this case, instead of turning that over, you were trying to marry some what I guess was Wi-Fi location data to the use of some stolen credit cards. Is correct?
Yes on the last part, and then the second part was no. I did turn that data over.
Okay. When you're doing this, how do you know? How do you know if you're wrong? How do you know if you made a mistake? How do you know that you're not wrong?
By checking the results within a second program, not just blindly relying on an automated software program.
Excuse me, Your Honor, may we approach?
Yes, you may. Excuse us, ladies and gentlemen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is all the evidence that you're going to hear for today. We're going to go ahead and break for the evening. Again, I need you here tomorrow morning before 9 a.m. We'll get started as close to that time as we can. Again, remember the admonitions that I've given you with respect to discussing this case among yourselves or with anyone else, from you obtaining or seeking any information outside this courtroom, for you allowing anyone to provide you any information outside this courtroom. it's extremely important that the decisions that you make are based solely upon the evidence that you receive from within this courtroom, as well as the instructions of law that I will provide to you. So please have a safe trip home. Think about anything other than the case. A safe trip back tomorrow, and we'll see you before 9 a.m. All rise for the jury. You may be seated, everyone. Just a couple of things for the record before we break for the day. On behalf of Mr. Pardon, have you had an opportunity to at least do a first review of the proposed instructions that were provided? And if there's any thing that you have outside of that, just get a copy of that to me.
We had none. I don't think we had much. There were a few, what I would consider grammatical, just wanting to kind of narrow, grammatical basically, wanting to restate things.
Okay. Well, have those been shared with the state?
I will share them. They're not
Okay.
lengthy. I will share them with them right now.
Okay. I mean, go ahead and just have those conversations with them. I mean, ideally, sometime at the end of business tomorrow, we can firm up the jury instructions. That would be my hope. Okay. All right. And then any proposed instructions that you may have. I know some were provided pre-trial, which the court has already ruled upon. But if there's anything else that you'd like, get something to the court. Right. All right. If nothing else, I will see everyone before 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Have a good evening.